In this video, let's understand how to configure a Simba ODBC driver in Windows, macOS, and Linux operating systems. Let's start with Microsoft Windows. For this demo, let's use the Simba ODBC driver. The process is similar for all Simba drivers. After installing the Simba ODBC connector, create a data source name. To create a DSN, navigate to ODBC data sources from the Start menu. Ensure that you select the ODBC data source administrator that has the same bitness as the client application that you are using to connect to Trino. In the ODBC data source administrator window, click the Drivers tab. Use the scroll bar to select Simba ODBC driver from the list of ODBC drivers that are installed in your system. To generate a DSN exclusive to the currently logged-in Windows user, select the User DSN tab. Alternatively, opt for the System DSN tab to create a DSN accessible to all Windows users upon login. We advise opting for a System DSN over a User DSN. Certain applications may retrieve data using a separate user account, potentially leading to detection issues with user DSNs generated under a different user account. Click Add to proceed. In the Create New Data Source window, select the Simba ODBC connector and then click Finish. The DSN setup window is displayed. You may need to consult with your IT department or the data source owner for some of these options. In the data source name field, enter a name for your DSN. If authentication is necessary for connecting to the database, utilize the options within the authentication section to configure it according to your requirements. In the host field, enter the IP address or host name of the Trino server. In the port field, enter the TCP port number utilized by the Trino server for client connections, typically 8080 by default. Enter the synthetic catalog's name in the catalog field, which organizes all schemas or databases. In the schema field, enter the connector's schema name. Configure the other options tailored to the Trino data source. Note that the user interface may vary for different Simba drivers. Test the connection to confirm that the DSN has been successfully set up. The driver is now ready to use with any BI application. Now let's understand how the configuration works in macOS. Similar to the setup done in Windows, after installing the Simba ODBC connector, create a data source name. macOS does not include an ODBC administration application by default. We suggest utilizing an ODBC driver manager application, such as iODBC Data Source Administrator. Ensure you select the iODBC Data Source Administrator version that is compatible with your macOS system. Click on the ODBC Drivers tab and scroll down to select Simba ODBC driver from the list of ODBC drivers that are installed in your system. To generate a DSN exclusive to the currently logged-in macOS user, select the User DSN tab. Alternatively, opt for the System DSN tab to create a DSN accessible to all macOS users upon login. We advise opting for a System DSN over a User DSN. Certain applications may retrieve data using a separate user account, potentially leading to detection issues with user DSNs generated under a different user account. Click Add to proceed. In the Choose an ODBC driver window, select Simba ODBC driver and click Finish. The DSN setup window is displayed. In the data source name field, enter a name for your DSN. Next, we will proceed to configure the key value pairs that will define the configuration of this DSN. Click the plus icon to add the host key, then enter the IP address or hostname of the Trino server. Click the plus icon again to insert the port key and specify the TCP port number utilized by the Trino server for client connections, typically 8080 by default. If the database you are connecting to requires authentication, refer to the user documentation to configure the authentication type as required. For this demo, let us set the authentication type to No Authentication. Set the catalog field and enter the name of the synthetic catalog, under which all the schemas or databases are organized. Set the schema field and enter the name of the schema. There are other options you can configure that are specific to the Trino data source, detailed in the user documentation. Click OK to save the settings. Select the newly established Simba DSN and click Test to verify the connection. The driver is now ready to use. Let's move on to Linux. Similar to the setup done in Windows and macOS, after installing the Simba ODBC connector, proceed to create a data source name, DSN. we suggest using an ODBC driver manager application such as Unix ODBC or iODBC. Enter the ODBC instj command to confirm that Unix ODBC is utilized for this setup. To verify that the ODBC driver manager on your system is configured to function with the Simba ODBC connector, adjust the environment variables to ensure the driver manager identifies and utilizes the correct configuration files. Access the shell script with your preferred text editor to configure these variables and define the locations of the connector configuration files. Refer to the user documentation for instructions on configuring these variables for your chosen ODBC driver manager. For this demo, we are utilizing Unix ODBC. Assign the ODBC INI variable to the complete path and file name of the ODBC INI file. Adjust your driver connection settings in the ODBC INI file provided within the driver installation directory. Perform the same action for the ODBC inst INI file and Simba ODBC INI file, ensuring correct referencing of the environment variable expected by Unix ODBC. Once the driver manager gains proper access to the configuration files, proceed to create a data source name. The ODBC INI file is pre-populated with boilerplate content, simplifying the process of entering relevant values. Within the ODBC Data Sources section, introduce a new entry by entering a name for the DSN, followed by an equal sign, and then the connector name. Now, modify the pre-configured Simba 64-bit DSN for this demo. Proceed to establish the key value pairs constituting the configuration of this DSN. Enter the IP address or host name of the Trino server in the host field. Specify the TCP port number utilized by the Trino server for client connections in the port field, with the default port number being 8080. If authentication is necessary for the database connection, refer to the user documentation to adjust the authentication type as required. For this demo, set the authentication type to No Authentication. Explore additional configuration options specific to the Trino data source, detailed in the user documentation. Once the new DSN is configured, save and exit the text editor. Utilize the ODBC driver manager to test the connection. Upon successful testing, integrate this new driver with any business intelligence application. There you have it! Configure the Simba ODBC driver on your Windows, macOS, or Linux system with ease. Share your feedback with us at user-enablement-video@insightsoftware.com. Please select the link in the description for more information on all Simba drivers.